Hello and welcome back to our EOC prep. I am Mr. Civics. Thank you for using this resource. Hopefully it will make your EOC experience easier. I'm trying to just review some of the items that you talked upon this school year. I know you talked about these things. Your teacher probably already discussed these things with you. Maybe you forgot them. So I'm here to just kind of refresh your memory before you get to the EOC. So last time I talked about just how did we even arrive at this democracy, the system of government that we use. And today I'm going to talk about a few more influences that our founding fathers used as they started to shape what our government was going to look like. We talked about the idea of just democracy, representation, participation of citizens in government. Remember, our government was not designed to be complained about, but to be participated in. That really began in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome, where you have representation, you have democracy, you have participation in government. All of that just started to take place in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Well, then our founders looked at some philosophers, all right? One of them being John Locke, okay? John Locke came up with this idea of social contract. You've heard this already. I know you know it, but I'm going to just discuss it with you briefly, all right? A contract is like an agreement between two parties, okay? In this case, John Locke is talking about party A being the people, all right? And party B being the government. And John Locke says that in this contract, the people have an obligation to the government, and the government has an obligation to the people. So what obligation do the people have? Well, they actually give government their power. All right, we will place you in power, and then we will agree to obey you. All right, that's our part of the contract. And then John Locke says that the government then has a responsibility of looking after the individual rights of the people. Now, where do we come up with this idea of what individual rights people have? John Locke came up with that as well. He said there's this thing called a natural law, right, where each person is born with these unalienable rights, these rights that cannot be taken away. All right, the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to property. All right, that's John Locke's idea of social contract. That's what the government's supposed to protect. All right, so the government cannot take your life, your freedom, or your property as long as you obey the government. Okay, so there's that contractual agreement that you have there. Knowing that there are terms on each side, each side has to agree to those terms and to uphold those terms. If the people don't obey the government, they can be imprisoned or fined. If the government doesn't uphold its end of the contract by protecting the individual rights of the people, it can be replaced, all right? That's where our great system has a representation that has terms where you can be voted out of office. If you think that your representative is not doing their job, you can be like, yeah, you know what? You're not looking after my individual rights. I'm not giving you my vote next time, right? So John Locke came up with this idea of social contract and natural law. Last time I did talk about Montesquieu and how he talked about separation of powers, right? And I quizzed you, right? I'm going to give you a second to remember that while I take a sip of my America Cup coffee here. We the people, because we the people here at Civics is Fun love America, okay, if you didn't know. All right, so then we have the English Bill of Rights, another influence on our government, where this thing happened, the Glorious Revolution took place, and they took some of the power from the king and queen and put it in the form of a document, all right, and said, listen, all right, you can still be king or queen, but we're going to give some power to Parliament, all right, and it's going to be in the form of the English Bill of Rights, where the people actually have these individual rights, okay? So there was another thing that we got from England. Then when the Pilgrims came over, they signed this thing called the Mayflower Compact. And what that was an agreement that, like, while they were there, while they were establishing the first colony, they would self-govern. Okay, that's really what the Mayflower Compact actually introduces to us, is the idea of self-government. All right, you're on the boat and you're like, all right, we got to go to land, but we got to make sure that we behave so that we can settle a colony, so we can prosper, all of this stuff. So that the Mayflower Compact was truly an agreement saying that we will govern ourselves. And then again, last time I talked about the Magna Carta. Well, something else the Magna Carta did set up, it did put limitations on government power, but also gave people right to a fair and speedy trial. Okay, gave people that right because the king was withholding that right. All right, so that's something else that came out of the Magna Carta is a fair and speedy trial. And then Thomas Paine. All right, we get Thomas Paine with common sense. Right, so what he does is he looks at what's going on. He's like, you know what? It doesn't make much sense that tiny little England should govern not so tiny colonies. Okay, it doesn't make sense that a king or queen should pass along their power to someone who may not be so competent. So he writes this pamphlet, Common Sense. It circulates throughout the colonies, and they're all like, wow, this is great stuff. Yes, we should go to war against England and fight for our independence. And it just made sense, or common sense. So all of these ideas, again, kind of mixed together. In my class, I kind of called it this cauldron of democracy. All right, we added all of these things. We had the idea of fair and speedy trial from the Magna Carta and limiting the power of government, right? And we have the English Bill of Rights, introducing individual rights to people. Montesquieu's like, I got an idea, let me throw in separation of powers. And then, here comes John Locke, and he's like, oh, but what about, natural law? And then let's throw in a contract, and we'll call it social contract, right? And so they're all mixing all of these up together, and that's what kind of turned into this democracy that we have today. Well, I hope you took some of that in. You remembered most of it from before, but if not, you're reminded of it again, and now you remember it for the EOC, and I will see you next time for our review.